For our project, we examined transportation in the area on High Street between Hubbard and Goodale. First, we examined transportation during the day. The first mode we studied was biking. During the day, the roads had some through traffic and had lots of parked cars, which made it crowded for bikers. Only a few of the Kogo bikes at the stations were being used. This caused for not that much bike traffic. Due to the Share the Road initiative, one would think the roads are pretty accessible for bikers, but this is not what we observed. Oftentimes, cars were frustrated with bikers and did not share the road like they were supposed to. This caused for bikers to be weaving in and out between cars. The next mode of transportation we examined was public transportation during the day. There was lots of public transportation bus stops throughout the area which we observed. There were probably 8 or 9 bus stops in total on each side between Hubbard and Goodale streets. These bus stops came in a variety of shapes and sizes. There were some, like this one pictured, that had coverings to protect from inclement weather, but most were just poles or signs in the streets for pedestrians to wait at. We believe this is in order to clear the sidewalks for pedestrians who are walking. We made our day observations during the week around high noon. During this time, there was a lot of use of the bus system. Most riders were elderly and young adults, going to different places throughout the short north and beyond. The most traffic was going southbound. Next, we observed driving through the area. We wanted to see who was using their cars and what they were doing. During the day, there was a fair amount of cars driving through the area, but most were not stopping to use the space. The majority of parked cars belonged to professionals out to lunch. Finally, we wanted to observe walking in this area. Being able to have a place where commuters can walk throughout the area is very important to making a socially adjustable space. In general, the sidewalks were fairly wide for multiple pedestrians. However, much of the sidewalk was closed near the Hubbard side of High Street. There were not sufficient crosswalks across High Street, and some of the sidewalks were quite torn up. During the day, there were lots of people using the sidewalks, mainly mothers and young children, runners, or older people. The flowers and trees seemed to provide comfort and relaxation to pedestrians. Then, we observed transportation in this area at night. Again, we observed the biking in this area at this time. This was around 10 p.m. on a busy Saturday night. There was not much bike use during this time. Most of the bikes were locked up along the street. There weren't very sufficient bike parking stations, so a lot of the bikes were parked along street poles or signs. The Kogo bikes that pedestrians can rent to use throughout different areas of Columbus were all in their cages, meaning that no one was using the bikes at this time. We do not believe this was an optimal time for people to be riding around on the bikes due to the busy traffic. We again wanted to observe public transportation in the area. There was not as many buses as we saw during the day, and we think that the stops were less frequent because less people were using it. The majority of users riding the bus were students coming from campus to enjoy the short north nightlife. There was also many more pedestrians crossing the street, causing for a more dangerous route for bus drivers. The majority of people coming downtown were not using this public transportation, and we believe this is a social injustice because they are not utilizing the public has to offer. Again, we observed driving in this area. There were many changes that we saw from driving in the area from the day observations to our night observations. Beginning with parking. There was not as many frequent parking spots available. There was one parking lot where you could park off of Hubbard Street. There was also parking meters, but not many of them were open, and a lot of them were very expensive to park and only had 2-hour limits, which are not maximizing the time that people were spending in the space. Another majority of the parking meters were closed due to the valet parking. This caused for a lot of confusion for drivers onto where they could park and get in close proximity of where they were going. This meant that users had to find other ways to park their car or to get down to the short north. This often resulted in pedestrians using valet parking. Valet parking is very common between restaurants in the short north. You could find almost all the high-class restaurants offering valet parking, so users did not have to waste time trying to find a place to park. This was very costly, though, and served as another social injustice in this area. Finally, most commuters were getting there in terms of taxi cabs. This is a more expensive option for commuters to get to the area, but then they do not have to deal with the hassle of trying to find a parking space or paying high valet fees to park their car. Finally, we again observed walking in this area. Again, the sidewalks were fairly wide for multiple pedestrians. This was very important because, it being Saturday night, there are many pedestrians out on the streets walking around, so there needed to be lots of space in both directions. Again, however, much of the sidewalks were closed due to construction, especially near the Hubbard side of High Street. This caused for pedestrians walking in the street or jaywalking across High Street in order to get to the other side for the sidewalk. It also hindered the construction on the right side. There were many people using the sidewalks, entering and leaving the restaurants and bars which fill High Street. There were also some runners, but not as many as the morning shifts. There was also valet stands set out that were taking up some of the sidewalk, and this caused for some walking deviation. After observing, it was easy to see that even though these 4 different types of transportation are present, they aren't fully optimized.